Hello and welcome to another Wednesday workshop with me, Bruce McLaughlin from the Knowledge Exchange Centre. This week we're going to be looking at enhancing something that we talked about previously. In other words, we're going to go back to our old friend Word and look at inserting pictures into our text. Before we move into the practical part of this demonstration, let's just consider why we'd want to insert a picture into a Word document. Well, the first thing is that a picture will really help to tell your story for you. It'll start to bring your page to life. Any image is going to add impact and drama to your page of text. Of course, when we talk about pictures, we could also mean a graph or a graphic or a logo or anything of that nature indeed. Remember that old saying, a picture is truly worth 1,000 words. So, part one of our demonstration then is inserting that picture into your Word document. Let's move over to Word and show you how you start the first part of the process. Here's our Word document. Now let's have a look at inserting that picture. We go across and we click on Insert and we find the little picture icon here. If you click this down arrow and we want to choose a picture that we've already stored somewhere on our computer, then we click Picture from File. We locate the picture that we want to insert, and that's the picture. So if I double click on that, there we are, the picture arrives in our text. Now when we look at that, we might think that picture's a little bit bigger than I'd like it to be. So if you look in the corner of the picture and along the sides, you've got these little boxes that will allow you to change the scale of your picture. A really big tip here is make sure you use these corner ones, because when I click and drag and hold, you'll see that's moving the scale of the picture and it's keeping it proportionate. If I try to use these ones, you'll see it has a terrible impact on the picture and really distorts it. So we definitely don't want to do that and ruin our picture, because you can see, particularly if you're using something that's got a font or a type in it, that would really put things out of place. The next thing we're going to want to do is to really put the picture in its place so that it's placed exactly where we want it within our text. Let's have a look at how we're going to do that. The default setting in Word only allows me to have my picture set to the left-hand margin of the page, but I want to be a little bit more creative with what I do with my picture. So let's just look at a couple of options that we have. I'll move across to my picture, and when I right click, it brings me up a series of options. The one I want to look at is wrap text. So let's first look at the options that we've got here. As you can see, the default is inline. Let's first look at the advantage of using this one that's called top and bottom. I click on that and you can't immediately see any change to that, but what I can do now with my picture is I can move it so I can position it more centrally on the page, to the right of my page. I can move it around a little bit, and you can see create perhaps a more pleasing place for my picture to be. Let's assume for a minute we want to put it over here on the right hand side of the page. That looks okay, but we have a lot of white space here and maybe we're not happy with that. So let's look at our second option. I'm right clicking again on my picture, I'm going back to wrap text, and I want to try this one now. I'm going to click on tight. And as you can see, what that's done is it's positioned the text very tight as the name implies, around my picture. And again, you can see that I can leave it where it is. I can move it to the center. That's not very pleasing. Or I can move it back over to the left, and it wraps the text beautifully around my picture, creating quite a pleasing impact. So we've got our picture in place, and the next thing we might like to have a look at is how we can really bring that picture to life, add even more impact to that image. Let's move back over to Word and I'll show you a few enhancement tricks. Lastly, let's look at adding some real impact to our picture. I move across and click on my picture again, and when I right click with my box that comes up, what I want to look at now is this option here, which is formatting the picture. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see this brings me up with a number of options at the side. The first one I want to look at is under this little paint bucket icon here, and I'm going to look at the line. By default, Word has set us to have no line around our picture, but I want to add one. I can choose my color. The default has come up as blue. That's reasonably pleasing. Let's leave it as that. But I think it's maybe set it as quite narrow. So I'm going to increase the width of this line by clicking this up arrow. And if you watch what's happening to the picture, you can see that that line's just getting thicker every time I click on the picture. So when I move away from the picture, now you can see I've added a pleasing border to my picture. Here's another subtle amendment to our picture. You can see I've still got my format picture options open here at the side. I'm going to move on over to this little hexagon, and I'm going to look at this top option, which is called shadow. Incidentally, you can see the arrow is pointing down. It's giving me all my choices. If I want to move that away, I can click on that arrow, and there are some other choices here. I'm going to look at one more of those shortly, but let's move on to shadow for the moment. Over here, there are what they call a number of presets. I'm going to choose one of these to get me started, and I'm going to look at this one, which will add a shadow in the bottom right of my picture. I click on that, and you might just about be able to see over here that there's a very subtle shadow added around the edge of my picture. If I want to, I can increase the size of that by increasing the font or the point size here. You can see as I click on that, it increases the depth of that shadow. Let's have a look and see if we're pleased with that result. Yeah, actually, that's probably a little bit too great a shadow, so I'm going to go back here and I'm going to reduce my shadow just slightly. I'm going to go for a 5. No, I think I'm going to go for a 4-point shadow. Yeah, I'm happy with that result. It's very subtle, but you can just see that it lifts your picture very slightly off the page. I've softened my picture by taking away that border but leaving the shadow in place, and you can see that's probably a slightly more pleasing result with that shadow, particularly as we're working with a black and white graphic image there. Taking away that blue border has made it subtler, but we've left the shadow behind. Let's have a look at another subtle change that we could make to our picture. So I'm going to click on my picture again and move back over here. And for now, I'm going to take away the shadow. And instead of looking at shadow, we're going to look at this option here, soft edges. And what soft edges does is exactly what the name implies. It's going to soften the edge of my picture. Have a look. At the moment it's set to 0 points, and what I'm going to do is every time I click this up arrow, it's going to add a little bit of a soft edge to my picture. It's quite subtle to start with there, and you can see every time I click it, it's softening the edge of my picture. So in other words, it's adding a little bit of a blur around the edge. Quite often you would get that in old photographs, but it makes a subtler blend to how your picture looks on the page. Let's look what it looks like with a blur of 7, and you can see those soft edges that it's created around our picture. Quite a pleasing softening result to the picture, and helps to embed it as part of our page. So we've given you an introduction to Word. We've shown you how to use pictures within a document. I wonder where the next steps of our journey will take us. I do hope that you've enjoyed and of course learnt from this week's exploration of inserting pictures into Word. And as always, if you have any questions on this topic or on other topics, or indeed you'd like to make a suggestion for a future Wednesday workshop, then please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We really do love to hear from you. Take care out there. Copyright to this video belongs to Nelson College London, who reserve all rights associated with its use.